They're saving the last for the best. So, good afternoon, or is it good evening? Hamjambo, that's a Swahili word for hello. Now you're going home well enlightened about a Swahili word. My name is Cecilia Maundu. I'm a broadcast journalist. I'm a digital security trainer. I work at the intersection of technology and human rights. And this session has been made possible by the generous funding of the African Union, European Union for Development, D4D Hub. So I'm going to give this opportunity to my lovely guests who have traveled miles to be here so that we can be able to talk about what we are doing in the African continent. And I'm going to start with you, Emma. Kindly introduce yourself, where you're from, and a little bit more about yourself.
Thank you so much. A very good afternoon to everybody. My name is Emma Theophilus. I am a member of Parliament and Deputy Minister in the Ministry of ICT in the Republic of Namibia.
Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Amina Zawede. I'm the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of ICT and National Guidance in Uganda, East Africa.
Thank you very much. Kofi Fabrice Doussou, Senior Expert for the Digital Economy at the West African Development Bank.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to get right into the discussion. So to our first question, which is for you, Emma. Have you worked with other stakeholders when you developed digital policies in your country? Why is it relevant to work with diverse stakeholders? And what is one challenge of multi-stakeholderism? Because this is what we are talking about.
Yeah. So yes, definitely. As a country, as a government, we have worked with multiple stakeholders to develop our policies and our laws, particularly around policies and laws that are quite new in the country. Right now, we're busy drafting certain laws, we're busy drafting certain policies, and even implementing some. So we have worked with intergovernmental organizations such as the ITU. We've worked with the Council of Europe. We've worked with SADC in our region, of course, the African Union. And we leverage existing regional protocols or international treaties or international agreements to benchmark some of our policies and laws. And of course, digital policies do not exist in a vacuum. They need to be benchmarked against our existing laws, need to be benchmarked against our constitution. And we do this, of course, with an informed position on certain issues in the laws or policies we are drafting. And that way we're able to leverage on the regional bloc's position or continent's bloc position. That way we're able, of course, to cross-country collaborate on possible projects in future, but also ensure that we actually drafting laws and policies that are informed by our own position on matters, and then use this multi-stakeholderism as an opportunity to collaborate, to work with others, and take the inputs of even local stakeholders such as civil society and private sector.
Thank you so much. I would come to you, Amina, on the same question. Have you worked with other stakeholders when you developed digital policies in your country? Why is it relevant to work with diverse stakeholders? What is one challenge of multi-stakeholderism?
Thank you, Cecilia. Well, when we are developing policies, the theme of ITU this year is that we are not leaving anyone behind. So when we are developing digital policies, we have to be mindful of the consumers of these policies, the people who utilize the policies, the private sector, it is government, it is academia, development partners, civil society, and all that. So as a country, Uganda has a number of policies. We actually have assessed ourselves in terms of performance in line with how well we are doing on policy development. The Inclusive Digital Economy Scorecard has measured or has assessed us at being at about 80% in terms of policy development. However, the challenge we face is implementation of these policies. And it could be that maybe at some point there's some policies where we didn't have all-inclusive participation or collaboration, but going forward we have been intentional. And I think I see a number of partners we have engaged in development of our policies. We have the EU family, where we have, Estonia is one of the countries that are very active in supporting us, in assessing where we want to go, what we want to do. The World Bank, African Union, D4D, all these are stakeholders on the development partner side. But we also have engaged stakeholders in the private sector. Because for any economy to be digitally successful in its transformation journey, it has to be private sector led. So we try to bring on board the private sector to appreciate where we are going. Because at the end of the day, if you don't have an all-inclusive policy development process, then enforcement of a policy becomes difficult. We have also engaged academia because we know that the success of digital transformation really rides on research and innovation. So academia is brought on board. We also have the whole of, government, the various sectors, health, education, agriculture, tourism, and all these. One challenge that we have faced as a country in dealing with stakeholders on policy development is that many of these stakeholders have their interests or they have their priorities, and sometimes these priorities are not aligned to what the country needs or to what Uganda wants, for example. So you find that there's a time we had, before 5G became implemented, but it was still being perceived, and Uganda had 2G, 3G. You're talking about 5G. We don't even have, coverage over the whole country. Then people are talking about green technology and all that, and yet we have not yet got to that, level. So we have become intentional about saying, these are our needs. Don't feed us with your needs, but let us align your needs with our needs in order for us to be able to come up with policies that are relevant and can be adaptable by the society in which we are living in.
Thank you so much. You bring in a very interesting point, which is the issue of implementation. And I'll come back to both of you because they say implementation is king. But that is one thing I know we are really struggling with. So to the only gentleman in the panel, Kofi, from the perspective of Western African Development Bank, how did you experience the collaboration with African governments? What are your recommendations for a successful public-private partnership in advancing digital transformation?
Thanks very much for the opportunity to speak. And as a background information, the West African Development Bank is a common financial institution for 8 African countries in the Western African region, namely Benin, Togo, Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso, Côte d'Ivoire, and Senegal, and then definitely Guinea-Bissau. So most of our purpose is to finance projects, foster economic development, and then think about a well-balanced development of our member states. 3 of our member states are landlocked countries, and definitely most of our countries, specifically in their policy and regulatory development, have realized the importance of digitalization and how digital economy can foster inclusion, socio-economic development for more impact. So what we have done in the region is to go through not only a public-private partnership approach, but then we solve a public interest component, adding the social aspect of it. So we're working toward a public, private, and social partnership. Why? Because in the digital world, what we are looking for is how do we impact on our population, on our citizens. In the region, 60% of our citizens are lacking behind. They lack electricity, they lack internet access, and definitely they are not behind of a digital world, but they are behind many divides. So how do we address those challenges? That's why we have actually worked with a political umbrella to have a more political buy-in with the Commission de l'UEMOA, which Mr. Hannes has spoken about earlier, to develop in the region a well-calibrated regulatory approach, which is the regional program for digital economy development. How do we actually implement those aspects. Bringing private sector on board, and then see how private sector and our government can blend their resources together in order actually to have more impact in our population and bring our citizens to the knowledgeable world.
Thank you so much for that. I'll come back to you, Emma. So the first question, what are your experiences with collaborating with stakeholders such as the private sector, civil society, or academia? Amina mentioned something. Sometimes the private sector comes with demands that we cannot meet. So I would want also to hear your take on that.
Yes, definitely the private sector and civil society are much more impatient than academia. But we have learned that the biggest opportunity is to have open lines of communication. Once you have open lines of communication and continuous engagement, you better understand their needs and you better understand the urgency in which they want certain laws or policies to be drafted or implemented. And of course, there is a challenge in lawmaking because many a times lawmaking is quite tedious. It's quite long. Here at the conference, we do have our Parliamentary Committee on ICT as a way also for them to understand the needs of the digital world, to better understand the needs of ICT in a country and how it's important for lawmaking to not always play catch up, but also be proactive. Academia, of course, has come in very handy. Not every government department has all the skills or know-how in terms of expertise. So they come in very handy in helping us bridge those gaps with capacity building in our departments. And we use them a lot to see how best we can cut costs when necessary for research purposes. But of course, right now, for example, we are drafting our cybercrime law, our data protection law. We just passed and are implementing our cybersecurity strategy. All of these had a play with private sector involvement, civil society, academia. One of our private companies is training civil servants in cybersecurity. So really, when you have engagement and you have constant communication and trust and transparency between stakeholders and government being sort of a key player and a broker in that relationship, they come on board much more easier. They try to mitigate the time element to cut the impatience, and they're willing to put even resources to help government meet its objectives, and they benefit as well. So that has been our experience so far, and I hope that continues in the near future.
I hope so too. Amina, to you again. What are your experiences collaborating with stakeholders such as the private sector, civil society, or academia, knowing that sometimes the civil society is also making demands? Yes.
Maybe I will start with a kind of a background on how we are implementing digital transformation in Uganda. In Uganda, government has taken up an approach of what we call a program-based approach to planning for government. So there are different programs, about 12 programs. One of them is a digital transformation program, as opposed to a sector-based way of planning. Before you used to have the Ministry of ICT, Ministry of Tourism or Trade or Agriculture planning, but now we have programs. So the digital transformation program is spearheaded by the Ministry of ICT, and it has a governance structure. It has a steering committee that is chaired by the Minister for ICT. Then it has the technical working group that is chaired by the permanent secretary, myself. And then the constitution of these committees spans across, the various stakeholders. Government, the various ministries in government, because they have to be digitized. Then we have the private sector, we have academia, we have civil society, development partners. So we sit every quarter of a year to discuss the plans that government has in terms of digitization. What are our priorities? Even when we are budgeting, and planning for the next subsequent financial years, we sit as that group, the digital transformation group, and we know what are the challenges in agriculture, in education, in the various sectors, and how are we going to prioritize them? What are the low-hanging fruits? What are we doing in the medium term and long term? So by the end of these discussions, everyone owns a journey. Then after that, we go to even our ICT parliamentary committee to inform them, this is what the digital transformation program has for this year, and then we get collective input. Like I said initially, we are making sure we don't leave anybody behind. So all these questions are teased out during these discussions. What are you doing for the, people with disabilities? What are you doing for the marginalized groups? And so on and so forth. And then how is the private sector going to competitively, reap or benefit from the discussions? One of the recent engagements we have had with the various stakeholders is that we have a Digital Uganda Vision 2040. And right now, or about 2 years ago, we could not tangibly measure what we had realized towards the vision. So we have come up with a digital transformation roadmap to structure our journey to realizing that vision. With this, it's a 5-year roadmap, because we know we have about, how many years do we have between now and 2040? About 17 years. So we are saying we want to do a roadmap in tranches of 5 years. Because technology evolves every 3 years. So if we have a roadmap of 5 years, then we assess ourselves by 2.5 years. What have we achieved? What are we achieving within the next 2 years? We plan and budget for that accordingly. We bring the development partners on board, and everyone understands what's the landscape like. What is our contribution? And this digital transformation roadmap has 5 pillars. The first pillar is infrastructure, because I told you we're already doing well in policy. We don't want to invest too much in policy development, but invest in infrastructure, invest in skilling. We had a whole session on human resource here before this session, which was very informative. The other pillar is cybersecurity, because for whatever we do, we have to ensure that we are secure, or our systems and processes are secure. Then there is entrepreneurship and innovation as another pillar, because Uganda has a population of over 40 million people. And 70% of this population, over 30 million, are under the age of 30. So that population is a young population, energetic, agile. That is where all innovations happen. So we have to also plan for that population with intentional purpose of creating employment opportunities for them. So coming back to the question of what is our experience, the experience is that we are walking a collaborative and participatory journey to transforming Uganda with the various partners, and also trying to ensure that as a country, as a region, East Africa, we are working together. As Africa, we also have those initiatives. Recently, we were in Zimbabwe for the Smart Africa conference. Africans have appreciated the fact that we have to come together and work collaboratively to come up with solutions that serve, solutions that serve our purpose, solutions that are sustainable, and solutions that are cost-effective. But we cannot walk that journey alone. Countries like Estonia, who have, there's this joke that the only paper they have is toilet paper, because everything is paperless. So, but how do we walk that paperless journey? We cannot walk it without maybe borrowing a leaf from Estonia, hand-holding us in the journey, and the various, countries that have already walked that path. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You're very right. For us to get to where countries like Estonia are, we have to learn from each other. So Kofi, I would come to you with the same questions. What are your experiences collaborating with stakeholders, such as the private sector, civil society, or academia?
Thank you very much. Let me tell you that our bank addresses regional issues. We don't work with only one country, because our main concern is integration, socioeconomic development in the region. So what we have done is to ask various stakeholders, specifically the private sector, to be an accountable partner, an accountability partner to various governments. So what they have done is to be well organized so that we have we have legitimated just one component, which is a regional organization for the private sector, such as a think tank, who definitely act as a legitimate actor and stakeholder representing the private sector in the region, so that we can deal with that entity, and then as a development institution, as a government, to be more inclusive in developing policy at a national level. And then at the regional level, a political umbrella, Commission de l'UEMOA, deals on a daily basis with our government, because as a bank, we are an implementing partner. We fund projects. And then, indeed, in order to create value, we encourage our private sector to be well organized, to be well structured, so that there can be a response to many socio-economic issues in the region. During the COVID-19, what we have noticed is that many digital solutions have been developed without government implication, which shows that incubators, techs, entities, startups have knowledge, have capacity to drive innovation. But then this needs to be well structured. Otherwise, digital revolution brought in place, data revolution, cybersecurity, data governance, accessibility. Then how do we structure this and then develop, as I said earlier, a well-calibrated regulatory framework? And then through that structure, our government, through the Commission de l'UEMOA, a political umbrella, our private sector, and then our population could be well educated toward a common goal, which is addressing the digital gap issues.
Thank
Can
you
I
so
just
much.
add, Cecilia?
Yes,
So also in our experience as private sector, when we consult civil society, academia, ordinary citizens, you'd find that they would have opposing views for certain provision. For government, our role is to really ensure that regardless of the opposition to a certain provision to be put in the law or in a certain policy, whether it's from private sector or civil society, our role is to ensure that that particular policy thrives for every citizen, regardless in which industry they serve in. And that sometimes puts us in situations where we have to go to the litigation route, where either private sector or civil society takes the regulator to court or the government to court, and then the court can have the final decision. But at the end of the day, the idea is really to ensure that the policy or the law serves the bottom line, which is the citizen, regardless of which industry they operate in order to ensure that innovation thrives and that stagnation does not happen in the end of the day.
And that is one thing that has really been coming out clear, that the citizen has to be at the center of it, because this technology is about them. Yeah. I'm also curious to find out, and I'm going to ask a very uncomfortable question. Why don't policies work? Because we know they fail so much. It's like a term thrown there, but we know that most of them don't work. What could be the issue?
Well, the issue of implementation comes in different forms, the challenges that come with it. One, sometimes laws are enacted without a budget, policies are enacted without a budget, and miraculously, we think we can find the money along the way. And then crises come, or more pressing priorities come, and then there's no implementation. Two, what we have done in Namibia, especially when we believe we do not have the necessary input in terms of monetary input or capacity, we sometimes suspend certain provisions of the law and operationalize them later in order to ensure that we have put up the necessary infrastructure, the necessary financial backing or capacity to ensure we implement them. So that's why sometimes they fail. And especially for technological or digital-based policies and laws, as Amina said, it continuously changes. and sometimes things become redundant before you can actually implement them. Or as Kofi said, private sector finds a way to circumvent and innovate and come up with something new, and then you need to constantly adjust the law by bring amendments to Parliament to enact, or you simply just come up with a completely new one that will be able to address the challenges of the day.
Thank you. And this is for any one of you. Have you experienced any missed opportunities while at this, and how have you managed to overcome that?
I'll take that first. But before going to the missed opportunities, maybe something I would throw on to why policies fail. Sometimes is because of, the factors that have been mentioned repeatedly ever since this conference started. The leadership and the will, the political will to implement and enforce these policies is also detrimental to the success of policy, implementation. The skills required. When you develop a policy, you also have to put certain skills in place. Recently, one of, I think, the policies we are struggling to implement is the e-Waste policy. But mainly because it comes with, yes, the finances, Emma has mentioned that. It comes with infrastructure, it comes with the skill sets required that are lacking, and the technology. So all these put in place, of course, as we plan and come up with the cost implication of that policy. If there is no will to prioritize this policy in the plans and budgeting, then it becomes difficult to execute. One opportunity or opportunities that maybe Uganda or the Ministry of ICT has missed in policy development or engagement is that sometimes the policies we have, especially if a policy has not been all-inclusive, then yes, implementation becomes difficult because sometimes it has to do with jurisdictions, and your policy is not a policy that is user-friendly to, another partner that is coming on board. It becomes difficult. Sometimes it could be things to do around with the culture, because, when we have different development partners on board, there is a way maybe the Estonians behave, and we have to learn to do the same. There is a way Japanese behave. And if you're not adaptable as a country, if you cannot easily adapt, then you can miss out on several opportunities. Another missed opportunity could be because we lack data as a country and as a continent. Maybe we have data, but it's not harmonized. There is, I think I'm going to point to an example where I told you we have the largest population, youths, and we are looking out for employment opportunities for them. So ICT companies have come, and then I have pitched so hard. I'm sure even after here, I might get people interested in saying, we want to do something with you. Then they say, we have employment opportunities. Where are the people? But because you have not created maybe a source of data where you get these people by a click of a button, then you have to go looking for many of them, or maybe the ones who make it don't qualify. So data is becoming something that is very key and essential in us working with our partners and development partners. So if we don't get it right now, we'll miss many more opportunities to come. However, going forward, the structures we are putting in place, for example, like the roadmap I have said we are putting in place, is going to get us opportunities that we would have missed. Also, the development partners coming on board. Someone walks to your office and says, what can I help you on? And because you don't have your mindset clear or direction clear, you miss out on that opportunity. Or they give you less than they would have given you. So being structured and having clear plans and goals that have been developed collaboratively will help us get all the opportunities that we have to. Thank you.
Kofi, thank you, Amina. I'll shoot the same question. What are some of the missed opportunities that you have seen, and how can we be able to counter them?
Okay. First of all, let me quickly jump back to the former question when you were asking why sometimes policy don't work. I want to point out one concrete example that was in Kenya through the mobile money experience, M-Pesa. I think at the beginning, there was a problem to solve. And then the solution was M-Pesa. there were no policy framework, no regulation. The ICT regulator and the the central bank were definitely behind the innovation. And then after that, when policy were in place, policy have to be adapted to the reality and then definitely leave innovation to move and drive the ecosystem. So at the end of the day, we are dealing with an ecosystem with various stakeholders. We definitely have their own role. Governments have to lead the digital journey. That's because to put in place an enabling environment so that private sector can easily operate, and then, as I said, act as a let's say, a catalyst for growth, an engine to create jobs. We seek innovation, creativity. So, and then at the end, the last component is how do we educate our population to be in line with what the policy is requiring, and then use what private sector have invented. So I think in the digital ecosystem, I cannot talk about missing opportunity. There are plenty of opportunities, but then how do we adapt them to our realities? Because look, COVID-19 pandemic, can we say that we were ready? We were not expecting a pandemic, but pandemic shows how we can easily adapt our solution, our environment to the realities, and then how do you address socioeconomic crisis? With no help of the government, startups, incubators, innovators, entrepreneurs put in place various solutions, cashless services, and many solutions to allow our population to move forward and then at least to live. But then, most of those solutions were only accessible to people who were able to be online, to those people who have electricity and internet access. But then what do you think about 60% of the population of the African broader level who are lacking behind? They are not just behind not only a digital divide, they are behind all the divides. Then how do you address those questions? Hence, the need for that collaborative road and then partnership to act as a catalyst for growth.
Well, it's very encouraging when you say there are no missed opportunities about learning. Thank you so much. So in the interest of time, because we're running out of time, I'm just curious to find out from all of you, and make it a tweet, and not the tweet for Elon Musk, before Elon Musk. What is the role of media in all this? A tweet.
Well, I think the role of media in all of this is to inform the public, inform our citizens, the dangers that could come with technology, with internet, but definitely the opportunities that can be leveraged for our citizens, for our governments, and for our private sector. I hope that's 140 characters.
That's 160. Yes, Amina.
The role of media is to create awareness, to bridge the gap between government and the citizen, to educate the public about, what the priorities of government are, what the priorities and needs of the citizens are, and what government is doing for them. As the Ministry of ICT and National Guidance, we are doing both the ICT and the communication, so tying that together. And I always encourage our development partners that when we are conceptualizing projects, let's have a component of communication, because that is where we miss out. It looks like it's not a tangible benefit, but what you see when you invest in communication will take us a long way in adapting to whatever technologies and solutions we have. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Kofi?
I can amplify what both of the speakers just said, and then add that the role of the media is to voice the need of the community for more impact and then to be well addressed.
Thank you so much. On behalf of the media fraternity, we are sure going to take the gospel to the people. So I would give each one of you a minute to wrap up. And the last question would be, what can other regions and countries learn from African experiences? Because I'm sure there's so much from the mother continent that people can learn from.
For sure. Cecilia, I think, and I've said this on multiple platforms to the point where it might be cliche, that the continent, especially where, like Kofi said, where there's no law or no policy existing, we've been able to leapfrog our technological journey and accelerate our adaptability and our ability to innovate faster and not go through the tedious processes of adopting like other regions have done so. So we have the ability to leapfrog, but sadly we also have the ability to be left behind. And I think, as Amina said, whether it's with Smart Africa or the African Union or our own regional blocs, the continent, especially with the young population it currently has, that is meant to bulge in the next 20 years, has come to a very clear understanding that we now need to take the opportunities that exist right now, invest in our demographic dividend right now, and utilize the resources that we have to ensure that our nations are digitally literate, ensure that they're well connected in terms of infrastructure, regardless of the challenges. For example, Namibia is 800,000 square kilometers large, population of 2.5 million people, has a harsh landscape. So you can't put fiber everywhere. But we can use different kinds of technologies to connect the nation. And we're using and constantly studying and learning and being here at the e-governance forum to see how best we can adapt, how best we can come up with solutions that fit our profile and fit our lived experiences. And I hope that every region in that way can adapt to its own challenges and opportunities that exist for them. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Amina, 1 minute.
It's actually a tough question, but yeah, what the world out there or the developed world has to learn from Africa is that, the developed world ran ahead of us in technology while we're still behind. They made a lot of mistakes, but what they have to learn from Africa is that, we are a continent that is now chasing or running after the transformation or advancement that the developed world has done. So it is now an opportunity for us to think about sustainable solutions, cost-effective solutions, innovative solutions. You don't have to be structured to come up with a solution. We have developed a number of solutions that we are consuming as government, developed by our own innovators. Like the e-procurement system. We have taken procurement online for government. We are doing, online business registration by our own young people. So these solutions are sustainable, they are cost effective, and anybody can take them on. I know that the developed world has a number of legacy systems that they have to get rid of. So there is opportunity and potential in Africa for us to work together to come up with solutions that work, solutions that are sustainable, solutions that are green. Thank you.
Thank you. That smile tells a lot. There is so much hope.
Yeah.
Yes. Kofi, 1 minute.
Thank you very much. I think there's a need to look at Africa as one, but it's important to understand that Africa is a diverse continent. What is happening in Nairobi cannot exist yet in Ouagadougou, and what is available in South Africa is not yet ready in Bamako in Mali. So definitely every single country in Africa have its own reality. But my word will be a call for action for more collaborative, inclusive approach. Because we all have a vision of where every citizen in Africa have to participate in this digital knowledge and driven economy. So government can never achieve that vision alone, nor investors, nor private sector. This has to come through a more inclusive, a more structured partnership. And then indeed, seeking practical solutions need to be, to bring on board those international partners, IGA, ITU, Smart Africa, to learn what is working abroad. And then we'll see how we implement them and then adapt them to our reality to address our socio-economic needs.
Yeah, so as they say, everything that has a start has an end. To my panelists, thank you so much. It has been such an engaging conversation, so much to learn from and so much to take back home too. To the audience, thank you so much for creating time to listen to us. Again, this session has been hosted by the African Union, European Union Digital for Development D4D Hub. Asanteni sana and enjoy the rest of your evening. I'm going to invite Christina, who is going to take over.